Okay, so is everyone aware of what Project 39A is and what Square Circle Clinic is? Okay, so a quick introduction about what they do. So Project 39A was a research center which was started by Professor Anup Surendranath. That was based in NLUD. And what they essentially do is that they effectively work in the criminal justice space, and they work with defending basically prisoners who are facing death row. And right now, it's shifted to Nalsar and it's renamed or rebranded as Square Circle Clinic. So, with respect to one of the panels that was there in the Dignity Conference, was essentially about mitigation interviews. So, what mitigation interviews are is effectively it was mandated in a judgment that whenever a person is sentenced to death, they have to effectively submit a report which kind of characterizes or provides a comprehensive account of what their circumstances, of what the prisoner's circumstance is, and sort of to try and mitigate the punishment of death sentence that's been imposed on them. And Project 39 Square Circle Clinic, they do this by conducting sort of interviews with the prisoner, with their families, to have like a whole comprehensive account of what their life circumstances are and what has led to them committing this act. So, with respect to dignity, if I just open this up to the class real quick, like, what do you guys think? Like, do you think this is a dignity affirming or a dignity negating sort of exercise? Because these are essentially convicts who have been accused, and who have sometimes admitted to, let's say, raping people or murdering children or raping children, and they've been sentenced to death. And now there's this sort of exercise wherein you're trying to take stock of what their life experiences have been or are. And you're trying to mitigate that, and you're submitting that to the court to sort of mitigate the sentence that's been imposed on them. So, just real kind of taking stock of what the class feels is, yeah.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Yeah. My understanding from the U.S. perspective is that
my understanding is that it's people who are facing the penalty of death. The sentence hasn't been imposed yet, and the lawyers are coming in and saying, in this case, the crime was terrible, but don't impose the death penalty because of this person's circumstances. Okay, so it's before the sentence has been imposed.
No, here I think in the Indian context, it's after the sentence has been imposed, and you're trying to mitigate that sentence. And you're submitting a sort of report to the judge to say that, this person has been sentenced to death, but these are the reasons why.
Mitigated after the sentence.
Yeah.
So they already spent 10, 15 years waiting for the.
Oh, okay.
Stage. But is it really after sentencing?
It is after sentencing.
There are various parts to the process as well, like you have review petitions, curative petitions, so the mitigation thing can come at it.
But is it really? My understanding was that the whole thing, the mitigation has to be taken into account before the sentence is imposed. If you had to choose between life and death, or between 10 years or 4, and now we're talking about being sentenced without anything.
I have to tell you when.
That stage that the mitigation has, because you had that Shatrughan Sinha, Shatrughan Chauhan case, where the court said that, the way in which the court, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The way in which the courts have imposed the sentence is wrong because they haven't considered the mitigating factors before imposing the sentence. That's my memory of that particular case.
This is the Delhi High Court.
No, Supreme Court.
No, the another case, President of India has refused.
No, those are different.
No, I'm saying. No, I'm saying.
Because after conviction, there's no doubt about it.
No, at what stage that they won the case? After Supreme Court, President of India refused mercy, they challenged it before a High Court, not Supreme Court, where they gave more material saying, since this material was not placed before the President of India, he could not take appropriate decision. Therefore, the court can actually commute the sentence into life sentence. A lot of people were very surprised after refusal by President also it can be committed by High Court. But so that was the stage.
So it can be either before the sentence is imposed or to make an argument for commutation. Somebody's been convicted, they're sitting on death row, but it's been years, and you can say, enough, they should be released.
I think that's my understanding as well, because even in this specific instance, like the mitigation exercise, it was undertaken after the person was sentenced to death. It was a death row prisoner, and they were trying to mitigate the sentence or the death penalty that was given to them. So, does anyone have any thoughts on that? Like, it's
Basically, I have the context of the conference as well.
Yeah.
I can speak. So basically, but in the end, the concerns. So basically, the concerns which were raised by Professor Anup were this only, that when prisoners are forced to open up only for the mechanical reason of using their stories for mitigation, in the end, the dignity of the prisoners might not be preserved.
Yeah.
But in the end, this was responded by other speakers as well as Maitri Mishra with the thing that something is better than nothing. In the end, but like I think for the dignity to be preserved, I think what we can do is to tell the prisoners that this whole process is for this mechanical reason, and if they're consenting to it, if they are opening up to it, I think dignity may be preserved. But the concerns which Professor Anup was raised were very valid. But in the end, we can just make the process much more cognizant of those concerns. But in the end, the process is really needed in the end for death penalty commutation.
I think, yeah. So, okay, just to kind of provide a little bit more context about what Aditya was talking about. So, the conference, there was Ms. Maitri Mishra, who's also part of Square Circle Clinic, but saying why she thinks this entire exercise is a dignity affirming exercise, where she was like, this is a person who has committed a very serious crime, but what you're trying to do is that you're trying to put more context to what this person has gone through. You're trying to look at, who is this person apart from just the crime that they've committed, right? And these are people who have been stripped of their identity. I think today, I'm not exactly sure who it was, but they were talking about, just putting names, or I think it was Sindhuja who was talking about, kind of stripping the names and identity of people and just referring to them by just a number, which is exactly what happens in prisons as well, right? So you're trying to think about this person holistically. You're not trying to. Professor Anup, he came in with a very different perspective. He was like, this is not just about who is this person, but has this person consented to going through this entire process, right? Because you're going in and you're asking people all these intrusive questions. You're asking them to open up about their trauma, about, the things that they faced in their past. And these are people whose consent has been stripped in so many different ways. They're in an institution that does not recognize them for who they are, who does not think that they're deserving of any rights. And Professor Murli has also shared a lot of material with respect to the kind of treatment that that they have to go through, right? So I have printouts of them if anyone wants to go through them really quickly. And there was this prisoner, statement of this prisoner, political activist, and she was just mentioning how the female wardens, they're really cruel, and they effectively took away her sanitary napkins, strip searched her, imposed all these cruel indignities on her. And I think that was also kind of similar to what Ashi was saying. It's not only about access, it's also about people coming in and being, deprived of all these basic necessities. And in a system or in a structure like that, even if you're going in and saying that, oh, we're doing this for your benefit, do they really want it? Do they really want to open up about their life stories? It's something that we kind of have to think about, at least when we think about the whole.
See, those who want to save their neck, they open up. So where is the question of dignity here? See, if there is a threat to your neck, your life, so then the question of dignity becomes secondary. But should we preserve the life of the person at the cost of dignity? Is a very tricky question that But if given a choice, do we really believe that some prisoner would say that my dignity is, after all, that is never left after going through entire process. Even if you are a pickpocket also, you are already deprived of your dignity. If you are involved in a serious rape and murder, the entire trauma of going through this leaves very little dignity for the person. And people they make a choice. So therefore they open up, and then I think largely Anup was right. I think it's a very hard choice. It's not like that outsider novel of Albert Camus. Do you remember the last scene? Where that guy says that just get out. When priest comes and says, I'm going to pray for your dignity of your soul, that guy says just get out. Because he doesn't want to lie or be in an illusory situation. It's in a fictional novel, trying to be true to yourself, works. But in real life, you have to save your neck.
There's a 30-page document. Really thoroughgoing, no? In that sense of the kind of questions they're asking.
So, I have some material from the Square Circle Clinic as well, where they kind of provide this entire case file of this mitigation exercise. They've provided two case files actually. So one, it was a death row prisoner, and he was convicted of murdering a child, and he's deceased now. So I believe we can share that because it wouldn't be infringing any sort of confidentiality. It's open access. So in that, it was really sort of interesting because it was happening during COVID. So they had written letters to the family of the prisoner. They spoke to the prisoner himself. And there's a lot of, it was really interesting because these were social scientists who were conducting it, psychologists who were conducting it. And they were talking about different types of child development theories, where they were like, if you ask a child who's playing in a room and you say, okay, what are you doing? And they'd be like, they're playing with this. So they've not really learned how to provide context because that's something that you learn when you interact with other people and when you talk to other people and you're like, okay, I have to build more context. And something that happens through sort of interactions with people, right? And they were like, his speech, the death row prisoner speech, it's much like that. He will be really vague about things. He won't really provide any details. And they were like, this sort of comes from the social isolation and neglect that he's been faced with in his past, in his childhood. And these sort of things you don't really get through a criminal trial because the voice that a prisoner is accorded to in the whole criminal justice system is next to nil, right? And the second thing that was also sort of interesting was I had a discussion with Professor Daly also about this, where they were talking about in the interviews with the parents of the prisoner, they were talking about how he had a sort of boil in his head and eventually that erupted and they couldn't really afford medical care or medical attention. And because of that, they were like, he was always a little off after that. And you sort of see how these indignities, you can kind of map, right? You can see where the institution failed him. It's not just at the criminal justice level, but you also see that, okay, that he was not given proper health care. He was not, accorded the sort of attention that perhaps a child needs to be accorded to grow up to be a well-grounded sort of individual, right? And this was, I don't know, heaping a piling of incremental indignities really led to the what he committed, right? The crime that he committed. And that is the benefit that a mitigation exercise can have, where you don't really see him as just the perpetrator of a horrific crime, but you see him as more than just that. You see the sort of institutions and structures that had led him to committing that crime. I have the mitigation report with me as well, so in case anyone's interested in reading that. And ma'am, if you want to go through the question and the kind of question.
No, so when we are saying, okay, as lawyers, what do? We understand this. And so, what kind of questions? Let's take a random guess. What kind of questions would you ask? Let's make it a class exercise. Supposing you had to do this, what would you ask? You can maybe just make a whiteboard of questions. I know, 10 minutes. Let's just do this in the close. But what kind of questions would you ask? I'm amazed at the kind of questions that are being asked. Can we
map out, what would you ask? I mean, one thing, of course, Teja has already told you that, in terms of access to medical health and facilities, was this your experience of, accessing medical health facilities as you were growing up or as a person? So, what does it mean to humanize a person? That's the question. What do you think would be there? And then, of course, Teja will share the report so you can actually see the kind of questions. But let's just take a quick round across the room. What would you ask?
Ask them aspects about their childhood, the kind of relations they had with their parents. I don't know, maybe.
Like how where they grew up, were women seen, how were the people behaving.
Around there. Yeah, sure.
The kind of education that they were exposed to.
Yeah, education, right? I mean, what is the education? Not even kind of education. Did they have access to education at all? Or did they have access to schooling? Could their parents afford to send them to school?
Maybe if they were, if they were exposed to harsh financial conditions, what are the kind of steps they had to take to
Yes,
survive?
yes. Socioeconomic background would be a question that you would ask.
Did they ever felt loved by people around them?
How were they treated by the society around them? How would you ask that question? I mean, if you had to ask it in a very specific way, what would you ask?
If they, like, what is the conception of being cared for?
That's very open ended, no? I mean, if you want to make it very sharp, what would you ask? Any incident which has impacted them. All right. Yeah.
They resent the people around.
They does have any resentment against people.
I remember reading a piece a while back. I wish I could cite it, but I think there was some argument that criminals have been victims at some point of time in their lives,
Yeah.
and somehow it psychologically impacts them it psychologically impacts them and explains their actions at a later point of time. So maybe if
Yeah.
they've gone through any bad experience in the past.
No, nobody's asking about prior crime record. That'd be like the first question. I mean, is this your first brush with the law, or have you had? That would be a question.
That would already be known to the team, no? To the legal team.
Yeah, but I mean, it need not be in terms of a conviction. It could be in terms of, I mean, the legal team might not know if you've ever been arrested or there was an accusation. They may not know all of that information. But I'm saying, would that be a relevant factor or it would not be relevant?
It probably not go against what you're trying to say because a repeat offender has had exposure.
So the fact that you're not a repeat offender is a consideration, no? Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something.
There is an that I can give related to that. There's a girl who got raped at around 12 or 13 years. I've seen that in some kind of series. So she got raped around 13 year or 14, and she tried to go for justice, but somehow due to politics or delay, like who will see, because she belongs to the minority, so no one was available, and that kind of assistance she couldn't give. But she mug up, and she was like in that kind of horror. So she planned whole, when she got like around 30 or 35, she was a teacher, a small primary teacher, and the horror that
Trauma.
that is the thing, that she commit a crime, that she kidnapped the children, a small children, 4 5 years children, and she was running a play school, and she was very happy as a portrait for whole the society. But behind the back of the mind in her, like she was facing that
Yeah.
same incidents which she has gone through,
Yeah.
and due to that she committed a one crime which was not belongs to her, but she committed.
Right, right. So the question of exposure to trauma yourself. Yeah.
I would ask if that person has given a chance to be heard, not with the law, not with with the prosecution or nothing else, but just to know what his thoughts were, his experience or whatever. Like, just did that person? I'm sorry to use he, but
Yeah.
if that person has given a chance to be heard.
Yeah. But I mean, I suppose this exercise is that exercise of allowing him to be heard, right? So, what aspect of his story you think would be useful for us to know if we are looking at a person who's been convicted of a crime? What is it that we would want to know about that person, which would be relevant for us to?
in my opinion, ma'am, like we don't know, we never know that what is relevant to us until unless the person gives us all the details, because we never know where we can find that one small loophole in the whole thing, like where we can
Yeah, I
hide
know
that
it's difficult.
back.
It's difficult.
Also,
But also, what we're hearing is it's difficult for them to also open up. So then, which is why I'm looking at that questionnaire. I'm like just amazed at the kind of questions that making sure that so many aspects, which even possibly that person hasn't thought of, is something that they're asking them to think about.
during my internship experience in a lower court, ma'am, there is this person where he's a person, he's from other states, not from Telangana or Andhra Pradesh. He's from some other state, and then he committed some theft. But the way he got to the court to like the in 24 hours something, like he has to be
Yeah,
in front of
yeah.
the judge. That theft, the person was made to appear with all the chains to the hands, to the legs, and with complete neck ring and chains. It's like he committed something very brutal or something. And then the judge granted some some remand for like 15-20 days or something. And then the most thing is like before the door, the police people removed all the chains and everything and then got into the court, and the judge saw that person, and then after coming coming out of the door, the chains again were like put on him. This is like an open secret. The judge knows, the police knows, the lawyers knows, everyone knows, but they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't understand the concept of dignity where it is there in there. And also a public prosecutor.
So one of the questions that they were asking was this, were you told about your rights at any point in the entire trial stage? So as lawyers, things that we need to bring onto the record are also questions where when was legal aid first offered to you? Where did anybody come to you to say that you have something that can, protect you, or any kind of protections that you have received? So because those are also questions that they have documented.
We called, and I was working under a public prosecutor then, and he called him and personally and asked did you get any help? Did you get any legal aid? Like, do you know
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is wrong?
Yeah.
And the police shouldn't do so kind of thing. We were we talked to him, and he was like, no, just chhod do, sir. We don't leave it, sir. We don't want to. I don't want to tell anything. I don't want to be heard as well. Just take me to the prison.
Yeah.
Let me be there for some time, and I'll be back anyway. I don't want even to share anything because I'm fed up with this.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, I know. So one of the questions they had, sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that like what she said about I'm going back to her first answer was the fact that whether they were heard. I think that could also translate into how actualized their life has been, their passions, their hobbies, because unless or until you've actualized beyond the very bare minimum, I think all of these questions and this entire discussion
Yeah.
becomes a lot channeled, in my opinion.
Was he instigated by someone else? Was
Yeah.
somebody else instrumental? And was he used as a pawn?
True. Does the person see himself as innocent even after conviction? It's entirely possible where many of them would continue to believe that they have not committed the crime despite whatever evidence has been presented in court.
As that, was there a time in their life when they suffered from a mental trauma,
Yeah.
depression,
Yeah.
any sort of
Yeah.
mental health issue?
True.
Then another thing we can ask is how their father used to treat their mothers, if it's a criminal trauma.
Yeah. That's the question of violence. I mean, how what is the level of violence? I think that's something that somebody else was saying. The level of violence that they're used to seeing around them, which also making them. Yeah.
I will ask that the society where that person was grown up
Yeah.
is an ecology.
Yeah.
Eco-related environment.
Yeah.
And whether particular nutrition access was provided by
Absolutely.
parents or not.
Yeah, fundamental, basic needs of your whether food, clothing, shelter needs have been met for like a consistently long period of time, or have people been so neglected and abused that
Are there negative impact of the kind of cases that lawyers, police, and judges deal with on their own life? The lawyers, judges, and even police seem to be becoming very insensitive because day in, day out, they are exposed to a lot of violence. That will have consequences on their professional ethics. Okay, one public prosecutor, a very senior officer, we invited to train our lawyers. So he was telling, in a famous, very well exposed case of violence on an accused, police have inflicted a lot of violence. When he was produced, a young judge asked the accused to show what happened. She already read the report in the newspapers. So that guy has removed the shirt and showed how he was beaten up. The judge started recording them. Highly trained public prosecutor advised her, Judge madam, please don't record these things. His advice was, tomorrow this case after 5 years it comes for a challenge before another judge, you will have to go as a witness. If you record today.
You were saying something, I didn't. You had your hands up above. Yeah.
Interpersonal relationships, like if they had any friends or like were close to their siblings or stuff like that.
Yeah, that is one of the questions, the kind of the size of the family. Have you had siblings? Have you had friends? Do you have any kind of a support system? That is one of those questions that is being asked. Yeah. Interesting.
Medically, their health and their histories must be taken into account. I've read about so many cases where people commit crime just because they were not good in their brains, basically.
Yeah.
Like maybe there is a tumor hiding.
Yeah, that's what we were hearing, right? Yeah. The medical history of that person. It's definitely a.
To the medical conditions,
Yeah,
actually, they
yeah.
go straight to the psychiatric part of it.
Yeah.
But then medical histories must also be taken.
Yeah. No, so what I was amazed is it's a 30-page document. Obviously, it's not going to get done in a day. It would require so many number of hours and days to spend with that person to be able to record all of that. It's not something that is taken very, obviously or in a very casual manner. So I think that is an exercise as a lawyer. It's very worthwhile to just flip through it to see the kind of work that has gone into creating a questionnaire. Forget recording the answer. To create a questionnaire about what is it that you would ask of the person in order to get a sense of where he is located. I thought it was very fascinating.
I guess I'll just make a point. I love the way you.
Yeah, can somebody take a picture?
Yeah, I love the way you sort of wrote it, not as a list, but as sort of an ecosystem of a person's life and the different relationships. And I was also thinking about earlier today when we were looking at the different rights that UNICEF says every child should have, the provision rights and the protection rights. And so much of what you said you would ask about are really, did they get those things, right? Were they deprived? Were they exposed to violence? Did they have the proper relationships? And just to sort of think about those two things together, sort of, we think about these are the things that every child should have. And then longitudinally, years later, we're looking at someone in prison who's committed some terrible crime. And we're thinking, I wonder if it's because of a lack of or a violation of some of these things that we think every person should have in order to grow up healthy in society. So just to sort of look at that connection between those things. And when we talked earlier, we were looking at, how people think about the best interest of the child in this sort of holistic 360 kind of look at all these different dimensions. And it's just, that's what that board reminds me of, is all the different dimensions of a person's experience, which is what recognizing their dignity is.